Well, hello and welcome everybody to this edition of Hawk Talk. I am David Sandars. I am the Regional Director for EMEA for datacenterHawk. And I'm very pleased to say that today I'm joined by Mark Pestridge of Telehouse in the UK. Mark, would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, David, and thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast. Yeah, so I'm Mark Pestridge. I am the EVP and General Manager for Telehouse Europe in London. Essentially, my responsibility is to ensure our customers have a joined-up experience from the moment they start looking into our services through the contracting phase and then all the way through their life cycle with us. So I've been with the organisation now for just over 6 years and looking forward to our discussion this afternoon.
Very good, thank you for that. And Telehouse is a very well-established business across Europe. Perhaps you'd like to give us a bit of an understanding of the locations and the footprint and the operation in Europe and further afield as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as Telehouse, we're owned by Japanese organisation KDDI, which is I think around about the fourth largest company in Japan, very much focused on the ICT, managed services, telecoms business. And Telehouse is the kind of data center arm of KDDI. We were established in 1989, actually started in Staten Island in New York. So this, I think, is our 36th year of operation. Very much focused on the data center world. We are now in 14 countries. So in North America, in the US and Canada. In Europe, we're in France, UK and Germany, but specifically London, Paris, Marseille and Frankfurt, and then across into Asia. We're in multi-sites in Japan, in Tokyo and Osaka, then in Vietnam, Hong Kong, Singapore and China. And really very much focused generally on the retail colocation side of things, so all around interconnection, how we can kind of facilitate interconnection for our customers. Here in London, Telehouse North was our first building in 1990, very much focused on enabling back then customers or telecom companies to actually exchange data in a neutral facility. And from there, we brought in a load of service providers. And now really we have, I think, if you look at peering DB, we're between 800 and 900 actual connections in that campus, but very much focused on connectivity, whether that's through service providers, CDNs, peering exchanges, ISP, ASP, all that kind of good stuff. So and we've been growing very fast, as you can imagine, over the last 35, 36 years. It's unbelievable to believe, really, that the data center industry in Europe is only about 35 years old. It feels like it's been through a long time, but also various different iterations as well, as I'm sure we'll discuss.
Absolutely, and thank you for that overview. And it's very impressive. Telehouse UK, as you say, established 35 years ago. It must be one of the first data centres in the UK, which means it might be one of the first colocation data centres in the whole of Europe as well. Often referred to by some people, including myself, as the granddaddy of the industry. Tell us a bit about the early days. Why was the business established, and especially where it is in London, in the Docklands area?
Yeah, I think the actual idea for colocation really came from two engineers in New York. Actually, they were looking at how they could create a way for, as the telecoms market was beginning to deregulate, looking at ways that customers could exchange traffic in a neutral environment. And I think effectively what they were looking for was a house for telecom services, so a telehouse, if you like. So that's how it all started back in 1989, as I say, in Staten Island, and then really in the first foray into Europe, as you say, was in the Docklands in East India Quay. And we opened there, as you say, in 1989. We started with Telehouse North, which was designed at around about a maximum of about half a kilowatt a rack, which in today's terms is absolutely seems absolutely phenomenal, doesn't it? Half a kilowatt was high density back in those days, and we've kind of grown from them. We now have 5 data centers on that campus. So we have Telehouse North, North 2, West, East, and South, which is our most recent kind of opening, which is on the other side of East India Quay and was the former Thomson Reuters building, which we are retrofitting. And we have currently about think about 5.5 megawatts of available capacity in that building. We're then looking to expand even further in our current campus with what will be Telehouse West 2, which we're looking to open early part of 2028. And really, the reason that we're looking to grow where we are is our customers looking for the opportunity or the ability to expand, if not contiguously, but in the same virtual campus, if you like, where they're not paying huge amounts of money for interconnections between different buildings, but they're actually on the same campus with a virtual cross connect, even if it is between buildings.
So a business very much built on connectivity, and the business model very much focused on staying close to that original connectivity hub. It's very impressive that the business in London, at least, has managed to develop from 1 to 5 data centres now, all in a very close proximity and on a current campus basis. What kind of challenges has that provided over the years in terms of trying to achieve that?
Yeah, I think I guess that there's a number of challenges with trying to grow in the Docklands, which back in 1989 obviously was a very different landscape to the way it looks today. But we're effectively operating in a city centre. So whereas some of the other data centre out of town providers can obviously build large, great kind of warehouses, if you like, our only option is really to go up. So the challenge that provides is because we're in the Docklands, which is effectively reclaimed land, we've got to go down or build down as far as we have to go up, so we can obviously support the load of the building. So that in itself creates challenges around from an engineering perspective, but also from a cost perspective, because obviously the further you build down and the higher you build up, the more the cost increases. So that's one of the challenges, and also working in a built up area, you've got to be very considerate and understanding of the environment in which you operate. And we operate in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, which is obviously a large residential area, so we've got to be very careful about the way we construct, when we construct, and the kind of the noise that we make when we are constructing. So there's all those challenges, and then there's the challenges of getting the actual equipment into site as well. A good example of that, I guess, is the recent retrofit we did on Telehouse South, where rather than knocking the building down and starting again, which perhaps would have been an easier option from an engineering perspective, but certainly wasn't from an ESG or an environmental perspective. What that meant was we had to take all the existing equipment out of the building and then put new equipment in. So you can imagine in a built-up residential area, actually trying to crane chillers onto effectively the 11th floor of a building in the middle of London is a pretty challenging thing to do. But we managed to do it, and again, another thing that we have to make sure that we're executing a huge amount of preparation. We have to work with the London Borough, with the roads, and also with the local residents, just to make sure that we're doing everything in as responsible a way as we possibly can. But ultimately, what that gives you is obviously the ability to deliver interconnection, as you say, which is enables you to connect to Telehouse North, the most connected building in Europe, but also gives you close proximity to the city, but also to Canary Wharf as well. So that the benefits to our customers are definitely worth the investment we have to make from a cost perspective and a preparation perspective.
Well, it sounds incredibly complex. That project to retrofit the data centre there, perhaps worthy of a separate podcast all in its own.
We've definitely more clever people than me, David, that were working on that.
Yeah, well, it's a testament to the team and to the people involved there, and also to the approach as well. Like you said, there's quite a lot of stakeholders, including the local authority and the local community, that have to be involved, I guess, in a complex project like that.
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. And preparation is the key, I think, and engagement as well. I think we may talk about it later, but our engagement with the local community is really important to us. As I say, we work in all of our data centres are in the Borough of London, London Borough of Tower Hamlets rather, and it's important to us that the impact we have on that community. So we're really careful about how we do that front, and in terms of engagement with the local council, but also with the residents, and also with some of the charities in the area as well.
Sure. Absolutely. And you pointed out a minute or so ago that one of the key differences between the Telehouse business and other businesses in the data center sector is that you're in the middle of a very highly densely populated urban area. So you can't just put a plonker warehouse on a piece of brownfield estate and plug some power and a bit of fibre in. And what does that mean in terms of kind of target customers and the kind of companies that you look to work with at Telehouse and to provide a service to?
I think from our perspective, I think it's kind of multifaceted. I guess we have to spend a huge amount of time in making sure that we're working with the right kind of partners to get us to that level. But also, what we're really clear from a customer perspective is that the area in which we have our strengths are very much focused around, as I said earlier, a little bit around retail colocation rather than wholesale. So there is I guess a real value in being in the Docklands, where you can connect to the city, the West End, and also Canary Wharf. And there's a real value around having everything in one campus, which from a management point of view, from a resilience perspective, but also, I guess, more importantly, from a security perspective, makes it much easier to control everything that goes on within the site. And I think, we all know about the new DORA legislation, which is affecting not only financial services companies, but companies that operate in the financial or deliver services to financial services companies. And with the Telecom Services Act, which is around service providers, the actual security element is so important. So for us, the ability to be able to pull that all into one campus where we can manage who comes onto site, when they come onto site, making sure they only get access to the right areas is supremely important for us. And one of the things that we do a huge amount of work on when we're actually designing a new building. And the other thing, obviously, is at the moment working out where and how you're going to get your power feeds from. I talked about it earlier on, but when we first designed North, we were looking at half a kilowatt a rack. I mean, today what people are looking at, a minimum of 12 to 15 kilowatts a rack, but sometimes even higher up. So you're now designing buildings which are perhaps not just around the traditional air-cooled world. They're around perhaps some sort of liquid cooling, whether that's direct to chip or rear door heat exchange, whatever it might be. So there is a lot of work around how do you build data centers for the future, which will cater for requirements which are not just around typical air-cooled or traditional air-cooled kind of environments, but also around the future of liquid cooling as well. So that places huge kind of not just much challenge, but a huge amount of thought into how you get those data centers to work in both of those ways, where you think that customers will probably want the ability to have air-cooled and perhaps high density computing in the same area. So how do you build those, and how do you create an environment where you can kind of satisfy that custom demand? And I guess the other point is you're also trying to create a data center which is not only going to fulfill demand for when you go live, maybe in 26, 28, but also maybe 5 or 6 years down the road as well. So you're trying to kind of think about where the market is going to go. So there's a huge amount of thought and managing risk and thinking about possible permutations, talking to other people in the environment, people like yourselves, I guess, about the way the market is going to go. So a huge amount of debate and conjecture, and then real kind of rationalization before we put those plans into place.
Sure, it's interesting trying to predict exactly how the market's going to evolve in that respect, and what we're seeing, especially for large scale, if you like, out of town or more rural data center developments, is a trend towards single client build to suit data center developments. Huge complexes of 30, 40, 50, even more megawatts in a single building, and one client for that entire building. The whole data center being able to support liquid cooling and also air cooling and a hybrid of cooling technologies. Are you seeing demand from the enterprise or for smaller scale deployments, but still utilizing liquid cooling and hybrid cooling solutions as well?
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, we're definitely seeing both. I think we are seeing some demand for things like 50 kilowatts a rack, we're seeing that fairly, not regularly, but reasonably often. I think we're seeing that. But there's still most of the current demand for projects that are going to go live in 25 or 26 tend to still be looking at, if not 100%, the majority is air cooled. But it's been quite a quick and trajectory up from maybe 2 years ago, which was kind of 6 to 8 to 10 kilowatts a rack, to now where we're seeing 12 to 15 as pretty standard. And a lot of that does sit, as you say, in the enterprise space. So whether that's financial services or retail, it's definitely still on that air cooled road. We're also seeing quite a lot of higher density requirements, and I don't know if you see this as well from some of the service providers. So traditionally, networking hubs or networking pots were fairly low density, but we are now seeing the equipment actually draining more power, or drawing more power rather. So we are actually seeing some of the service providers, which is our traditional type of area, actually going up and up in terms of density, but not quite getting to that liquid cooled area. We're still able to do it from an air cooled perspective.
Can you give us an example? Sorry to interrupt there, Mark. Could you give us an example of the kind of density that like you said, the network node for the service providers is now moving towards?
Yeah, so we are actually seeing 8 to 10 to 12 kilowatts in some of the new network deployments. I think combined with the fact that there's been quite a lot of consolidation in that market, as well as there's been various mergers and acquisitions. But yeah, we're actually surprised when it first happened, but we are now seeing quite a lot of network companies really reducing the amount of real estate they're taking and taking fewer racks, but with higher density. And as I say, that's 8 to 10 to 12 we're definitely seeing. We can't quote names, obviously, but there's a fairly large provider that's going through that at the moment. And as a result of that, they're going to move out of one of our buildings into one of our more higher density buildings to be able to cope with the kind of density requirements that they actually need.
And presumably the higher density gives them greater capacity and lower latencies and
Exactly right.
speedier communication for all.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And for us, it's, and I'm sure you're seeing this more widely. Land or real estate used to be the problem, but now it's not. It's connectivity or access to the grid that is the most important thing. If you can get the power, then I think you've got a compelling case. So I think it's really interesting shift in dynamic. And I guess to the point you're making earlier about building in the Docklands, that will really help us, because we won't need as big buildings to cater for the power, if you like. We can maybe condense those buildings down, or maybe build less floors, because customers are going to want same amount of power or more power, but in less footprint, which should help us, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see where it leads, and how the engineering gurus manage to approach that particular challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned connectivity. We touched on it quite regularly through this conversation already, and Telehouse obviously is one of the main network nodes in the UK and therefore in Europe as well. Give us an idea of the number of telcos that you work with, and the kind of availability of connectivity solutions that you can offer to clients.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at PeeringDB, I think we have anywhere between 800 and 1,000 kind of connectivity partners listed across off the campus. The most connected building is Telehouse North, and I guess without wanting to sound arrogant, I think that any carrier that enterprise customers will want to connect to will be in the Telehouse campus. I think if they're not there, I think then I'd be amazed. So there are a lot of the traditional type companies, the tier ones. We're also seeing quite a lot. All the altnets have come to campus as well of late. I think the other point to really emphasize is that for 30 years now, we've been a primary node for Links. We have a very strategic and important relationship with Links, which obviously creates peering. But we're also seeing a lot of the cloud nodes there. So it's in the public domain. So obviously there's a Azure node, and there's a AWS Direct node in the building, plus numerous CDNs, ISPs, ASPs. But I think in terms of the total, to answer your question directly, it's between 800 and 1,000 if you look on PeeringDB. So it's a phenomenal amount of carriers in it. And I guess what that does is that just gives any customer the opportunity to use any carrier or any service provider that they want. And we do pride ourselves on that. I think it's really, it's our heritage, it's where we've come from, and something we continue to really put at the core of what we do. You know, as I said earlier, we don't really look at massive type of hyperscale type deployments. That's not what we're good at. But what we are good at is providing as many interconnection opportunities as possible. And as part of that, our cross-connect business, we have a team of engineers working 24/7, effectively running new cross-connects. And I think we run somewhere between 600 and 800 new cross-connects every month. So it's a core and key part of our business, and obviously it's important for our customers.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just an incredible amount of cabling inside one building, or between buildings on the campus, that's for sure. And a really impressive number of connectivity partners and telcos that you operate with them. I'm just wondering, can you name them all?
No, can I? But I do have a sheet where they're probably on. So no.
I'm not going to test you. Don't worry.
Test me. We'll be here for a while. This will be a long podcast.
I mean, to people perhaps outside the industry, if you said, well, there's between 800 and 1,000 telecoms companies operating just in this one campus, they'd probably think, well, there can't be that many telecoms companies in the world, and yet here they are, all within a very small area in central London.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting that London is the most connected market in Europe as well, ahead of Frankfurt and ahead of Paris. So it's good for London and good for the UK economy.
Absolutely. Something we should perhaps publicise a bit more than we do in the UK.
Yes.
But presumably that variety of connectivity provider and partner leads to a very varied and diversified customer base from the enterprise sector as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we're seeing definite uptick in the enterprise sector. I think our traditional business has been around, as I say, service providers, content providers, some of your MSPs, cloud providers, content providers. That's been kind of the heartbeat of Telehouse's business for, I guess, the best part of 3 decades. But yeah, we are seeing a lot more interest and take up, if you like, from the enterprise sector. I think that was beginning to happen pre the pandemic, and then post pandemic with more flexible working, where people were perhaps looking to downsize the amount of real estate they had in their offices, and therefore maybe move some of their IT equipment out of their offices. We are seeing a decent uptick in terms of the enterprise sector. I think the particular area where we're seeing a lot of interest and traction, and related to the point I was making around security and DORA earlier on, is around the financial services sector. We are seeing a big uptick in not just projects, but actual deployments within the Telehouse campus. I think they obviously need a lot of interconnection. Security is very important to them. So making sure that you have a lockdown campus with all the security requirements, making sure you have access to remote hands 24/7. These are all important factors for the financial services sector, and they do a huge amount of due diligence before they actually make a decision. And I think that's something that really plays into our part. So financial services, definitely. We're also seeing more general inquiries around pharma, healthcare, life sciences. And whilst AI is not massive for us at the moment, just because of the compute requirements, that we do believe that we'll see more and more enterprises using perhaps their inference sites rather in our data centers, where they're going to need that connectivity element as well. But yeah, definite uptick in enterprise. They're a very different type of buyer than the service provider, where in the service provider sector you typically have a lot of know-how, a lot of expertise, people that have grown up with the data center industry, whereas in the enterprise sector, you're seeing people perhaps more from an IT perspective, who are just trying to understand more about the colocation and data center market. So it's a really interesting journey for us. And I think, we say this a lot in our company, but if we've got every customer uses us for something different, and I think our challenge is to understand what that application is, what that use case is, and how we can kind of make their lives a little bit easier, if you like. But yeah, long-winded way of answering your question, but a massive uptick in enterprise. And I think we have to understand that the application in different sub verticals of the enterprise, whether that's pharma or healthcare or retail or financial services, will always be different. So we have to adapt and mold our kind of proposition to suit that. But at the heart of it is the ability to interconnect. So to connect to all the service providers, to maybe connect to some of their partners, to some of their ecosystem partners and some of their suppliers is what's going to drive the opportunity for them and for us moving forward.
Absolutely, and it's still great to see that in an age, as I alluded to earlier, where there's a lot of data center companies looking to build a facility for a single client of a huge scale, and there are still organisations focused on staying in a single location and supporting perhaps the smaller scale, but no less important companies. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to a subject you touched on earlier, we started off with the 500 watt cabinets. Have you still got any customers using that kind of capacity?
A few, but it won't last long. I don't think there'll be a definite. It's all driven, I guess, by kit really. So when kit becomes end of life and they look to refresh, then that all changes. But don't get me wrong, we still do have customers that are half a kilowatt, 1 kilowatt a rack.
Yeah.
Maybe in 5 years' time, I won't be able to say that to you. But.
Yeah, probably not. We'll see how it goes. But you said that the kind of standard for you now is sort of 15 to maybe 20
to 15,
kilowatts.
Pretty much.
But we're hearing stories in the media and from the chip manufacturers that densities of much higher than that may need to be supported in the future. And what's a kind of established organisation like Telehouse doing to prepare for if you like, those super high density deployments?
Yeah, so I think it's been reasonably well publicised, but we're in the process of opening what we call a high density lab in Telehouse South. So we're creating an environment where we're asking or inviting our customers rather to come along to Telehouse South, which is the former Reuters building, to come and look at some of the technologies that are available to them in a fairly safe environment. So the lab will include, at the moment, it's going to include 3 different options. So rear door heat exchange, direct chip single phase, and then direct chip 2-phase. So those are, and we're working with 3 different manufacturers to provide those solutions. So really giving, as I say, our customers the opportunity to come on and test some of their equipment or our equipment in those environments. And I think what we're trying to do with that, David, is we're really trying to look at, well, where's it going to go? So when we launch our next building, which as I say should be online sometime in 2028, we want to make sure that the solutions that we are offering our customers are really what our customers want to buy and will help service their needs. So whether that's a mixture of all of those technologies, or even one step further into the submersion tanks, the full immersion cooling, I think we're beginning to look at that, and we're trying to create that kind of lab environment to help us and our customers know what the future is going to hold. I think my view, and if I knew the answer, obviously I'd be a very rich man, but I don't know the answer. But my view is there is going to be a requirement for traditional air-cooled colocation or data center services moving forward within the same environment as kind of high-density immersion cooling. So I think that's where we're probably going to have to look at some fairly innovative technologies, and you've got to also then think about things like floor loading, because those immersion tanks, for example, are pretty heavy. So where are you going to put those in relation to your air-cooled environments? How are you going to make sure that customers can connect? Who's going to do the maintenance? So it's going to be a paradigm shift, I think, in the way that the data center market operates moving forward. And not all the answers are known yet, but we're thinking long and hard about them. And I think, as I say, coming back to the lab, I think that gives us the opportunity to stress test and kick the tires on some of these propositions to see where we can fit into that market. Because I think at the heart of it all, interconnection is still going to be key. So our locations are going to be key. It's just how we fulfill those actual co-location requirements, and what is the technology we use to underpin the services that our customers need to support their businesses.
Sure, it's really difficult to plan for an uncertain future, isn't it? But it sounds like you've got a good facility in there to kind of look at all sorts of different options, and like we touched on earlier, produce a hybrid solution for complicated deployments. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But we always deal with uncertainty. Even now, when you build a data center hall, it when you're taking requirements or rolling out customers, it's like building a jigsaw without all the pieces. So it's always an element of kind of not second guessing, but planning and risk assessments and all that kind of thing. And it's the same, isn't it, with the technology moving forward? Where is the density requirements going to be in 5 years' time? Where they're going to be in 10 years' time? All those things are things we have to always kind of grapple with as we move forward.
Whereas it used to be sort of just traditional air cooled, now there's lots of different options as well from the cooling perspective, and the jigsaw's got a little bit more complicated, hasn't it?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, and there's more now. There's more 3D pieces. There's more of a 3D jigsaw probably than a flat wooden puzzle.
Yeah. Something for the super clever engineers to wrestle with, and they, as we all know, they love that kind of challenge, don't they? So.
Yeah, I think so, and it's interesting because obviously we're looking to bring on board the next generation of engineers from university, and that's the sort of challenge I think that'll incite the next generation, isn't it? Because as we move to new technologies, and it'll keep people stimulated and understanding the importance of data centers in general society, but also, as I say, bring some bright, creative young minds into our industry as well, which is really important.
And do you have a program in place to engage with universities or technical colleges?
Yeah, we do a lot of work actually. We got a great HR team here at Telehouse, and they do a lot of work with not just universities and colleges and kind of engineering programs and graduate programs, but also with the local community as well. So just really showcasing some of the opportunities that lie in the data center world. I think everybody knows about what Microsoft and Amazon and Netflix provide, but it's the kind of the plumbing that helps enable all of those companies that we're trying to work with. But yeah, we do a lot of work, as I say, through our excellent HR team to make sure that we are talking to the local colleges and universities as well as the local community to kind of showcase some of the opportunities that lie in the data center world, which I guess is in general terms, it's quite a young industry. It's 35, 36, maybe 40 years old in the UK. So showcasing some of those opportunities is really important. And it's been good. We've seen some really good engineers come through. We've got one in particular who's come through in the last couple of years, really moving very fast and challenging us all, which is a great thing to see with innovative ideas, as I say. So yeah, really exciting to be able to see that grow and develop and doing more work with colleges and universities as well moving forward.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, every data center conference you go to, there's one topic that keeps popping up. There's two or three that keep popping up, but one of them in particular is the skills shortage and how do we attract younger people into the industry to ensure that kind of continuity and that these complicated buildings can keep operating into the future. So very positive messages there from Telehouse, that's for sure.
I think absolutely. I think we absolutely need to do that. I think, and there's another part of that is it's kind of educating the world on the good that data centers do. I'm really passionate about this, as you can probably tell. But we do a lot of work which enables businesses to function. You think about what happened in the pandemic when one day everybody was told to go home. So how could companies continue to function? It's because all those platforms were in interconnected data centers, which enable people to stay at home, which is fantastic. And of course, that means there were no planes in the sky, no cars on the road, and so I think we have a job to do as an industry to really push forward the benefits and the enhancements to life that our data centers can actually do. I know we're one part of the solution, but by having an interconnected environment where you can access your everything on your mobile phone, you can stream, all those kind of things, they make life better, don't they? And I don't think we do a good enough job as an industry about really pushing forward the good role that we play in that, and historically they've tended to focus on the amount of power we consume or the amount of water that we consume. But I think there's a different story we can tell about the good that we provide to the environment.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I smiled to myself earlier this week. I was in Madrid, was sitting in a coffee shop during a conference, and an alert went off on my phone. It was my doorbell, and I was able to answer
There you
my
go.
doorbell on my phone and speak to my gardener about what I wanted to have done to a tree in the front lawn. And
There you go.
I finished that conversation and just started chuckling to myself. And then someone next to me pointed out, and yeah, you've done it all for free as well.
It's very true. Very true.
And I was like, oh, data centers are great, aren't they?
There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you touched on an interesting point there as well, and earlier in the conversation as well. In certain communities and areas, data centers, there's a lot of animosity against data centers. They're seen as kind of power-hungry, water-guzzling facilities. No one really understands, and it sounds like you've got a very active program in place to engage with the local community and actually explain to them a bit more about what goes on inside these rather anonymous buildings, trying to remain in the shadows.
Yeah, so as I say, we're very conscious of the environment in which we operate, which is the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, and really over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work to engage with the local community. I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier on, but we did a careers day for one of the local charities, and we brought, I think, 25, 30 of their equivalent A-level students to have a look around the facility and understand some of the opportunities that were available in the environment. I think the other thing that we really focused on is we have selected two specific charity partners in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, which were chosen by a group of people within our organisation. We have a kind of a committee which is called the ESG Champions, which is people around the business that want to push the kind of ESG agenda forward, and part of that is the social strategy. So they've engaged with a couple of our local charities, and what they've done is they've really understood some of the things that they can help with, which is, I guess, from a very simple level, is around financing. So I talked a little bit earlier about the Telehouse South building, which we refurbished from top to bottom, and actually we as part of that we were enabled to generate a huge amount of money from copper recycling, I think to the tune of £40,000, and we donated that money equally between the two charities. So it's £20,000 each for each of those charities to put back into the community to run the programs they do, which were anything from simple things like food banks to then more opportunities to help with CV writing, careers days, all that kind of good stuff. So really, what we do in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets with those two charities is really important to us. We also did a couple of other things. We did the London 10K, which I think 25 of us ran, and I think we raised another £8,000 for that charity. But then we also hosted a charity gala as well with all of our partners. And again, to the point about, the data center industry has kind of a reputation for, using a lot of water, using a lot of power. We brought a lot of our construction and operational partners together in a forum where we again raised I think it was another £40,000 for those charities. But showing what the wider kind of data center industry can do in terms of giving back into the local community. And I know that the work we do with those charities is really well received, and we're also doing volunteer days and all that kind of good stuff. It's a really important thing to do and to really understand that data centers don't just operate in isolation. They operate as part of a local community. And even just showing some of these guys on the careers day what we actually do and where some of their streaming platforms sat and where some of their phone apps sat was a really enlightening day for them, but a really important one for us as well. So I think that will continue to grow from strength to strength. We're going to definitely do charity days or charity galas once every year. And to continue to engage with the local community. So we offer a volunteer program for our people that can go and spend a day or days with the local community to help them with various things. So it's a really important part of what we do, and long may it continue, I think.
That's excellent to hear, and it sounds like the local community rather have really engaged and want to attend and come and learn more about what Telehouse is and how the data center operates, and maybe even learn how streaming on their mobile phone and
Exactly.
WhatsApp and all sorts of different other applications work and operate in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if one of them comes and works for us in the next few years, that would be a major win for us. I think that would be
Yeah.
a good investment of time. I think not maybe not in an engineering perspective, but whether that's in marketing or product or procurement or whatever it may be, it'd be great if that could happen in the next few years. So one of those people we take around on one of our careers days eventually came and worked for us. I think that'd be a fantastic thing, a great story to tell.
Sure. Okay, well, we wait and see. Let's connect
Yes,
in a few
absolutely.
years' time to see what
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
on
yeah,
that. Well, and
yeah.
talking of the future, how do you perceive the future for Telehouse in the UK? Where do you think the business will be in the next sort of 10 years or so?
I think that's a great question. I think from a pure capacity perspective, I think as I said to you, and we bought online 5.4 megawatts in Telehouse South last year. We'll have another 5.4 megawatts coming on in next year, 2026, and then we've got our next building that will go up 28. So I think we can see our way to providing capacity to early 2030s. I think there's a number of options that we're looking at. I think how do we expand the Docklands? To the point that I made earlier on, our customers want to grow in the same virtual campus, so we're looking at how and if there are any options to grow where we are today. But also then we're looking at other plans as well, and potentially could we look at other cities? Could we look at other areas around London to grow? I think, but we definitely see a good opportunity. I think we're committed to, as I say, to Docklands and growing if we can, but obviously space is reasonably limited. So we'll be looking at other options as well. And that's part of our kind of global growth kind of program as well. We are looking to expand potentially in Marseille, Frankfurt and Paris are our kind of historical markets, but also looking at other opportunities as well across Europe and perhaps wider across the globe. So interesting times, but again, just looking at the right opportunity and listening to our customers as well as their challenges and their opportunities grow as well. Where do they want us to be? Where do they want us to go? But I think certainly just focusing on London, we're definitely committed to the Docklands if and where we can grow in. But we have a roadmap, I think, to make sure we've got enough capacity well into the 2030s, and then what happens after that, we need to do some work. That's for sure.
Again, future planning, future proofing. It's all exciting projects to
Never
undertake.
stops, does it? Never stops.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, and we at datacenterHawk look forward to watching that evolution and growth. That's for sure. One final question, Mark, if I may.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you haven't been at Telehouse for the full 35 years, but in your opinion, what would you say is the one change that the industry has seen, be it kind of commercial, operational, around energy efficiency, or anything else that you can suggest that what's the one biggest change that, or the one change rather that has the biggest impact on the Telehouse UK business in that 35 years?
I think that there's kind of 2 points which are kind of interconnected, if you like, and we've talked about it a lot. But I think the drive in and the drive and increase in density, which and density requirements, we've talked about throughout this kind of podcast, it's been really seminal. I think we're now at a real kind of inflection point as we move from air to liquid, or a combination or a hybrid of the two, as I said before. So the importance of dual resilient connections to the grid is now way more important than the real estate. So actually having that access to power is really, really important. So I think that's the biggest shift that we've seen. And allied to that is as well as having access to the grid, you absolutely need to have access to 100% renewable energy. And that's been a major factor over the last few years, and quite rightly so. But even that has moved as well over the last few years. So whereas, it was all about, can you prove that you've got 100% renewable energy? But now it's about what value can you add back in? So can you buy that directly from the solar farm or the wind farm? Can you help create a new wind or solar farm? And then with that energy, can then you pump that back in to the local community through heat reuse schemes or anything like that? So I think that all those three things are tied. It's all about increase in power, but how do you get that power in the most sustainable way possible? And then how do you reutilize it back into the local community for good, whether that's whether that's heating a swimming pool, putting it back into flats around the area, all those kind of things. I think that's the major shift that we've seen. And I know, whilst I haven't been at Telehouse, as you say, for 35 years, that's the biggest one that I've seen in my career, not just at Telehouse, but throughout the data center world over the last kind of 10 years as well. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's certainly mine. my view.
Yeah, I think I do agree, and I'm sure there's many other people in the industry who would agree with you there as well. I mean, Mark, thank you very much indeed. It's been a fascinating insight, a really enjoyable conversation, and great to learn more about the Telehouse UK operations. So. On behalf of everyone at datacenterHawk and myself, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, David. Very enjoyable. And we'll keep you updated on the journey, how it evolves.
We look forward to watching it.